What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Emergency edition of the Thomas Mott Show on a Tuesday afternoon, as Philadelphia has some injury stuff we need to go ahead and get into. Robert Quinn has been placed on IR with a knee injury. What exactly is going down? We're going to jump right into it. As I always say, emergency, because we already did a show earlier today. Be sure to go ahead and check that one out. But we want to keep you guys up to date. This is a big deal, at least reportedly a big deal. And let's break down what's going on here. As NBC Sports has the article, Eagles veteran defensive end reportedly going on IR. That's just kind of a surprise. Had no idea Robert Quinn was injured. I don't think anyone did until the news broke just a couple of minutes ago. Here's the details. Quote, Eagles veteran defensive end Robert Quinn reportedly heading to IR. Quinn, 32, is having a scope on his injured knee this week and will be placed on injured reserve, NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reported. According to the NFL Network, there's optimism Quinn will be able to return for the playoffs. Quinn will have to miss at least 4 games, so the earliest he'll be eligible to return is the regular season finale on January 8th against the Giants. Quinn hurt his knee last week in practice and popped up on the injury report Friday when he was quickly ruled out for the game against the Titans. While Quinn had 18.5 sacks last year with the Bears, his 2022 campaign hasn't gone very well. Quinn has just 1 sack and 7 starts with the Bears before the trade deadline, and has been even quieter since. In 5 games with the Eagles, Quinn has a total of 70 snaps without much to show for it. He has 2 total tackles. You read that right. 2 total tackles and 2 quarterback hits. And even before the injury, Quinn's playtime took a hit. He played just 11 snaps against Green Bay and 10 against the Colts. Without Quinn, Eagles will still have a pretty deep depth rotational line on their defensive line. Their top edge players are Son Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham. Inside, they're even deeper with Cox, Hargrave, Davis, Milton Williams, and Ndamukong Suh, and Linval Joseph. So here's the deal. First off, this is a little bit shocking to me because I forgot he was placed on IR last week, or I forgot that he was injured last week. We did the whole injury report on the show. It was either Thursday or Friday, and we mentioned the fact that he did have a knee injury. Had no idea that he had actually been ruled out, and that's a little bit on me, but it's more due to the fact that we didn't really miss him. Like, the fact we didn't notice, at least I didn't notice he was out in this game on Sunday, shows you how little of an impact he's had so far in Philadelphia. And I don't want to rip on Robert Quinn right now. He's obviously going on IR. He's a little bit older at 32. It's going to take a while for him to go ahead and come back. We wish him the best. He could be a key contributor for Philadelphia in the playoffs, but this is not as big of a blow as Twitter will make it seem, right? Not as big of a blow as NFL Live will make it seem to lead their show most likely today at some point, or ESPN tomorrow, or whatever it is, right? It's not that big of a deal because Philadelphia had contingency plans and has contingency plans for the pass rush position, situation, depth, whatever you want to call it, in the absence of Robert Quinn. It's important to note that they will be just fine. You see the depth chart on your screen right now. Brandon Graham is coming on a little bit, as we'll see the sack numbers here in just 1 second. He is going to kind of take over those snaps that you would have had Robert Quinn in whenever they were kind of substituting back and forth. But really, Josh Sweat, you saw in that 6-sack performance Eagles defensive line had against, or should I say, they had this past Sunday, whenever they, really got after Ryan Tannehill like crazy. You saw what Josh Sweat was able to do, getting a couple of those sacks. So they are just fine, but this does mean you're going to see a little bit more Brandon Graham. You're going to see probably a little bit more in terms of total snap percentage from a guy like Hassan Reddick, who had gotten a little bit of a spell in there with whenever Robert Quinn was actually playing on the field. As you look at the sack numbers here, Reddick leads all Eagles with 9. He will get to double digits most likely on Sunday against the Giants. Hargrave is balling out. He's a Pro Bowler at 8. Then you have Sweat at 6.5, Graham at 5.5, Cox has 5, surprisingly, Williams has 2, and then the rest are kind of all non-defensive linemen minus the half sack there for Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. And so I don't want to sit back and say that they're going to miss or that they're not going to miss Robert Quinn and that Robert Quinn is grossly overrated and was a terrible trade move. And all those things might be true, but they still are going to be just fine without him. And the ability to get him back in the playoffs is still key because you never know if he can be able to contribute, a sack in the playoffs of Tom Brady in a divisional round or Dak Prescott. You just don't know when he could go ahead and come on. But for a team that's been uber successful this year, for a front office led by Howie Roseman, who will be Executive of the Year this year, he should be Executive of the Year this year, that's just kind of been the one stain on the entire resume. Now, thankfully, Philadelphia only gave up a 4th-round draft pick for Robert Quinn, so not like they gave up, a second, which would have been an absolute failure and a total mismanagement of draft picks had that been the case. But a 4th-round draft pick is kind of manageable, and look, Philadelphia saw an opportunity to get a guy who came off of an 18.5 sack season last year. Sure, he wasn't producing up until the trade deadline with the Bears, but the odds of him being this bad with Philadelphia were very, very slim. It was kind of a low-risk, high-reward sort of scenario, and yet it just hasn't panned out. So he will go on IR. Philadelphia will not miss him that much, just means a couple of other veterans like Brandon Graham might play a couple of more snaps a game, but as we saw in that opening article, he played 10 snaps against the Colts. 10. That's nothing. I could play 10 snaps against the Colts. You probably recognize me on the football field even more than Robert Quinn has over the course of this season. Now, it is worth noting here At Philadelphia, the sacks have really started to come on over the past couple of weeks. They were the league leaders in sacks, especially after the early Carson Wentz game, week 3 against Washington. Then kind of fumbled a little bit there over like a 3 or 4 game stretch where the sack numbers weren't as high. Dallas was able to pass them, but Philadelphia has roared back, and 6 sacks on Sunday really has made a difference. So the idea that they might not get as much pressure with Robert Quinn being out is just not true. They should be just fine, as they're number 2 in the league in sacks at 42 when they were bottom 5 in the league last year, completely unable to get pressure. And this again is with the Jonathan Gannon defense. The whole idea of he doesn't bring a lot of pressure, he still is getting to the quarterback there with 42 total sacks. So again, we're not going to harp on Robert Quinn. I know I've been a little bit highly critical of him so far this year because he did have 18.5 sacks in 2021. It's like, why can't you give us 5 this year? I think 5 at this point would have been, really impressive for Robert Quinn based on the fact he's done almost nothing up to this point. But it is worth noting that this is another short-term injury, at least a short-term IR injury to pair with the rest of the ones that Philadelphia is dealing with. You remember, Dallas Goedert still on injured reserve, dealing with a shoulder injury. The reports are coming back really strong that he should be able to go as soon as he is eligible. I believe 2 weeks from now. Avonte Maddox is in that same boat with an ankle injury. We'll see if he can actually go ahead and come back once he is eligible. Off of IR, CJ Gardner-Johnson, excuse me. He is on IR and is not eligible to come back for a couple more weeks, but should be good to go whenever healthy. And so Philadelphia, while they've avoided the major injury, knock on wood so far, they've been fine. They have had a couple of players go on short-term IR, and this is another addition to that, but probably the least impactful one versus, a Goddard or a Maddox or a CJ Gardner-Johnson. Now, think about Jordan Davis coming back from IR. He only played in 6 snaps in Sunday's win against the Tennessee Titans, and Jonathan Gannon at the podium this afternoon, basically said it was kind of a coach's decision. He's not 100% yet. They didn't want to rush him back, and they actually used him very well in terms of my opinion, because I didn't want to see Jordan Davis out there for almost any snaps because I think the ankle injury is not fully healed. And the fact they gave him 6, let him test it a little bit, comes off limping just a little bit there, and then finishes the game, he's fine, but he'll have an even greater impact with Robert Quinn being out in terms of rotational snaps on the defensive line, especially once he's 100%, whether that's Sunday or next week against the Bears or potentially Christmas against Pollard, Zeke, and the Dallas Cowboys. So in the end, Quinn, he goes on IR. He's eligible for the final game of the year. My guess is he will not play the rest of the season. He will come back in hopefully the divisional round and then give you maybe some healthy leg snaps there, potentially able to get to the quarterback and kind of resurrect that 4th round draft pick of what Philadelphia paid for him just a couple of months ago. Now, I'll finish by saying this. The number 1 seed becomes all the more important for Philadelphia. It's like getting a second bye week at the end of the year. If you're a wild card team, you're playing 6 straight games starting this Sunday. You have 5 in the regular season and then a wild card game. If Philadelphia can go 5 the next month and a half, get a week break, and then host a playoff team or host a playoff game against another playoff team in the divisional round, goes a long way in Philadelphia being successful and making a run at the Super Bowl. So there's your update. Plenty more stuff. As I mentioned, Sal Paolantonio on the show tomorrow. ESPN reporter going to be calling the Eagles game on ESPN Radio. Stay tuned for that one. Be sure to subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one.